I think you have a point there when you say that's their ace that they're holding on to the Chibok girls, because if you look at it critically, those are not the only girls missing in Nigeria.
Yes.
So how come they're not even willing to talk about other girls that are missing? Even some were taken from Bunyadi and so many other communities around in Adamawa, in Yobe, especially, and this one in Borno. So if truly they're willing to negotiate, they should also be talking about others. So it looks as if your first option should be the only option for the country. See how you can work your way towards the rescue of those girls, because it doesn't look like the bad guys are willing to let them off.
Yeah, and I think over time it would be with combat fatigue. So, all parties have been fighting. Boko Haram has been fighting, military has been fighting, even the civilians, they're really tired of what's going on. So I think after a while, and the military, the Nigerian government, can sort of use that pressure right now that Boko Haram is feeling to really try to pressure them into getting, the girls, getting them to release the girls. But, there's so many questions that abound, because apparently the Nigerian military says they've rescued about 11,000 hostages. So you mean out of 11,000 hostages?
Not one.
We still don't know where the girls are. We haven't even rescued one Chibok girl. So that makes some analysts feel that, that the girls are actually being kept in a cluster. So there were initial reports that said, they're being spread around. I know that Australian negotiators said they were not even in Nigeria, they were in the neighboring countries across the border. But then, we don't know. And if they're not spread around, because if with 11,000 hostages you haven't been able to find them, maybe they're keeping all the Chibok girls together in one location, or maybe they really are not even in Nigeria and they're across the border like the guy said. So different questions really abound on this.
What I tried asking then is in that footage we saw one of them who claimed to have escaped then couldn't even speak in maybe pattern English or broken English.
Yes.
That's the question people are trying to find out, because we're trying to put some bit of logic in all of this. If these were students who were about writing their final year exams, no matter what, this is Nigeria. Our lingua franca is English. Even if you're in the densely populated Hausa-speaking community, you still speak English. How come we still don't get to hear them, some of them speaking English? Are we being misled somehow by, I don't know?
Well, you raise a very good point, and it points back to so many different things. Number one being the level of development in the Northeast. Part of what we're saying, or the reason why Boko Haram came about to begin with, was because of poor socioeconomic infrastructure. So, what was the education like there before even Boko Haram came about? A lot of us believe that part of the reason why they thrived as, a following was because their members really weren't as, literate. They really didn't understand. A lot of them weren't even reading the holy book that Boko Haram was claiming to be teaching them from. So we already sort of have that issue. It also shows you the issue of the cross-border, and affiliation, so to speak. So yes, they're Nigerians, but then, is your affiliation more with Nigeria, or is it more with the tribe that's there, or so in some cases, like for instance, Kanuri, we know Kanuri is on the Nigerian side and it's also across the border. So is your allegiance to that tribe, or is it to, the country as a whole? So it points out so many things. In fact, though, what you mentioned about education is important, because it just shows that our problems really are just about to start. For instance, you're saying that the girls were in school, but yet, now they're speaking broken English. What about the fact that the schools have been closed for the past year or so? Exactly. Closed. And now we're having this, huge population boom of, a lot of girls, a lot of babies being born there, and just no schools are open. So it still, shows us that even after, we deal with Boko Haram, even with this generation, we have a future generation that's coming up that hasn't been exposed to education, critical thinking skills, and all these things that you actually need to be able to develop the area. So it highlights another problem that we're going to have to deal with.
That might also be one of the points or aim of Boko Haram, that one said that they never liked such kind of education.
Yeah, definitely. And you could tell if you see, a lot of pictures, footage, people who are, in the Northeast, you can see that one of the things they did was just to destroy schools and destroy institutions, establishments, and so on. And so that just shows you what they really feel about education. And they've managed to put that fear into the community, put the fear into girls and into people not to send their children to school. And not just that, even in the case of, then this was when the UNICEF report came out, this was what they were trying to highlight when they said that they're using more and more children as suicide bombers now. 75% of them are even females as well. So now you have a situation whereby the community is scared of any hostages that are released and so on. In fact, they're stigmatized. They've managed to put the fear in communities that sometimes you would see a child and would not want to help the child out, or you won't want to embrace them or bring them into the community. And same thing with girls. By the time you're having girls, they've been victims the entire time. Victims from when they were abducted, victims while they were in abduction. We've heard of, all the incidences of rape and so on that was going on. And then now they've been liberated. And, they come back to the community or the society, and society is like, nope, I don't trust you. I think Boko Haram has brainwashed you. You can come back and attack us. So they're being stigmatized. So that's another area that we all have to look into to ensure that they're not being pushed out of the community, and that the community learns to embrace them, and that you don't fear children, you don't fear taking care of the next generation, because they really need that help.
Some of the recent activity that has happened about this. Remember that recent one in Cameroon, when a girl said to be from Chibok, or part of the Chibok girls, happened. Governments went there, eventually said no, from Chibok, but not the Chibok girls. Now we've joined the coalition of countries to fight terrorism. And then many ask, on the communication aspect of this whole fight against terrorism and the Chibok girls, would it be a good idea if they were to set up a platform or have this briefing with maybe the group campaigning, some journalists, parents, Nigerians, ask questions in terms of, look, this and this are the kind of things we've seen. Is there any way whatsoever we should be optimistic about this? If that happens, will it help or not?
Okay. So at the end of the day, we're actually all asking questions.
Yeah.
Even the Nigerian government is asking questions. There's so many questions, very few answers. And so even though we can all get together, you can get all these different stakeholders to come together to ask questions, at the end of the day, if the government doesn't have answers to these questions, then we're all just going to be left scratching their heads. So instead, what the Nigerian government is doing, and which is what they should be doing anyway, is just to get your analysts on top of it. So what your analysts can do is to figure out, okay, there have been some people who will be rescued from this area, this area, this area. And they've all said that they spotted Chibok girls. So by the time you do some kind of geospatial analysis, you look around, you see what areas are people saying that they spotted them, what areas, are they saying other things, and you try and piece together the different pieces. That's kind of one of the things they can do. Another thing though that we found, there's some reports that say, oh, the suicide bombers, they're made up of Chibok girls, and there's really been no way to verify. Why? There are no forensics done. So, in fact, a suicide bomber, a girl, detonates, and nobody's coming to the area to take DNA sampling, possibly, run it against the parents, the DNA samples, if they have a bank of their DNA, and run it against and see whether or not it's, the Chibok girl. So there's some things like that the government can start trying to do, which is try to do more DNA analysis. When they go and they clear an area, and if they do some forensics on the area, do some swab, do some analysis, and then you see whether or not you're getting a match of DNA of, of relatives of the Chibok girls and so on.
Well, we'll just keep hoping and wondering what next for the rescue attempts of the Chibok girls. Thank you for coming on this morning. Tanwa Ashiru is a counter-improvised explosive device analyst, a veteran of the U.S. Air Force. We'll be back in a minute. Don't go away.